Corporate Services and Economic Growth Overview and Scrutiny Committee today, Wednesday, 15th of July. We'll start with agenda item 1, which is apologies for absence. No apologies? No, we're all fully here today. That's great, thank you. Item 2 is minutes, which is minutes of the meeting held 13th of May, pages 9 to 18. We agree those are a true record? Agreed. Thank you. Item 3 is disclosure of members' interests. Does anyone have anything that they need to disclose on today's agenda which they haven't previously disclosed? Nope. Okay, thank you. Item 4 on the agenda is the forward plan of cabinet decisions, pages 19 to 24. Sean?
Yeah, Secretary of Commission Chair as usual. The first part is the decisions taken by Cabinet. Members do wish to review. And the second part is the forward plan of forthcoming Cabinet key decisions that members may wish to identify for inclusion in the work programme in the future.
Councillor Taylor, you were first.
I have a question on that, if you don't mind. On the cabinet update, Advanced Northumberland, we've agreed to give them 130k for from the Strategic Management Fund Reserve to find specialist advice. First of all, why are we giving them 130k for specialist advice? And secondly, what is the specialist advice that we are going to be paying for? Should they not be paying for their own specialist advice?
Basically, you'll recall that a decision was made by full council for a refinancing package. That was before the last local elections. I think it was in probably March of 25. Since then, there's been sort of quite a degree of change of circumstances. The sort of economic environment in which Advance operates has changed pretty dramatically. There have also been some changes within the Advance management structure, and there have also been changes within the council's sort of senior management, most notably the arrival of John after the departure of Jan as finance director and section 151 officer. So it was felt that we should revisit that recommendation and look again at whether the sort of restructuring package that was proposed at the time was still the most appropriate way to go. So it's a council decision to basically, it's not an advanced decision. It was, they were happy to proceed, but we thought it was the appropriate thing to do, given the amounts of money involved, given the changing circumstances, to look at that decision and see whether that's still the recommendation that they would make to sort of put the financial structures in place that Advance clearly needs. So that's basically why that decision was made.
Well, I can't say I'm convinced of it, but can we get some more information, and will there be any more money given for any specialist advice?
I think it is a one-off. It's a one-off exercise.
Can we be sure of that?
Well, on this particular decision,
there's going to be other decisions.
I can't sort of give assurances about things that may or may not happen in the future. Because it's too broad a question, really, to be able to answer with any certainty. So what I can say is that, and there was a report written on this decision, and that's available. We can make sure that a copy is circulated, and you can get into the full detail. And that had been published. It wasn't a confidential report. It was published on the council's website. So,
Can we have the report sent?
Yes, absolutely. We'll make sure it's sent around.
Okay. Councillor Robinson, you had your hand up.
Yes, I've got a question on the forthcoming cabinet. But before I do, when you send that report round, can we look at the instructions that were given to this specialist company?
I don't think there's any we'll check.
There's nothing commercially confidential in it that obviously.
Well, surely
So,
Because surely there was, because you're just asking them about financial restructuring, aren't you?
well, we're also discussing the commercial arrangements of advance. I don't know whether there is or not. There probably isn't, but yes.
Well, you know, well, there's
Yeah.
a problem with your debt equity. That ridiculous stuff. Housing revenue account, you've got a report 9th of March 27. We normally get a report on PHLA. I'll make sure we get a report.
Oh, yes.
Yep. They come into this committee.
Thank you.
Councillor Soward?
I just need a little bit of clarification, okay? The sort of council is run on behalf of the people of Northumberland, okay? The Northumberland people really own it. Advanced Northumberland is owned wholly by the council, I believe. And yet, as an overview, there seems to be a lot going on with Advanced Northumberland, which the representatives of the people of Northumberland have no knowledge of. Are they in trouble?
Councillor Oliver?
Categorically, Advanced Northumberland are not in trouble.
Okay.
And secondly, I mean, I would push back a little bit on the assertion that first of all, just to describe some of the governance arrangements in place for Advance, because this was a point raised by Councillor Dickinson at the council meeting last week. The Advance Northumberland has its own board of directors. It has a council representative. It has a council. It has John as a director of the council, as the shareholder representative. It also has its own audit committee. It has an experienced external businessman as chair of that audit committee. It has a very strong business-based board. So the sort of the normal governance arrangements you would expect in a private company of its size exist, and probably then some. Beyond that, it also it falls within the scope of the council's group audit committee. It has external auditors of its own, but it also falls within the scope of the council's external audit. It comes to the council's corporate services scrutiny, this committee, pretty regularly and presents reports on what it's doing. It also goes to the council's audit committee pretty regularly and presents reports on what it's doing. And recently we had quite a long, detailed, which you were at, members forum about the activities of Advance. So I just think, to be blunt, the idea that there is, that things are happening sort of secretly. It also has a shareholder committee, group leaders. I think they are public meetings. Anybody can attend them. So the key decisions that are within the sort of scope of needing approval by the council. And there is a sort of an operating arrangement between the council and Advance. They're all taken in a public forum. Anybody can attend those. So, I just can't see that you could possibly have any other arrangements in place that would go beyond the arrangements that exist already.
Can I just, am I right in thinking that the members of the council who oversee Advance are taken from all political parties?
Well, in a sense, the council, those scrutiny committees are all party politically proportionate scrutiny committees. So in that sense, yes, they are.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, there's a member forum next week. Sorry.
I'm holding.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
Have you got any questions?
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to item 5, which is a final financial performance 2025-26 provisional outturn. And I'll ask you, Councillor Oliver, for that.
Yeah. First of all, apologies. You're going to hear not from me at this meeting. The first two reports, the reports the financial report and the debt recovery report, I'll sort of present. And if there are any sort of technical questions, which officers are obviously here to answer. The best report is a bit more complicated and technical, so I'll just introduce it, and then there'll be an officer presentation on that with some slides. So this is the final outturn report. The council produces a sort of quarterly report that goes to scrutiny and goes to cabinet, and this is the sort of final one for the last year, which is the financial year ending March 26. The recommendations are set out on page 25. Throughout the year, and this is perfectly normal, at the beginning of the year, the first quarter, usually it's an outturn report. So they're taking the position that has sort of actually happened in the first quarter and then projecting that forward to the end of year position. So usually we have a fairly bleak scenario at the end of the first quarter where we're forecasting an overspend. The second quarter, it usually improves slightly. And that's perfectly normal because, the officers are working really hard behind the scenes where there are increasing demand pressures or increased costs to find sort of offsetting savings and to manage those costs. So as we get through the year, the situation does become better. And I'm very happy to say that at the end of the year, we basically reached a balanced budget position, which on an organisation of this size with gross spending of over £1 billion and a sort of net budget of 400 and something million, that's no mean achievement. I think we should sort of recognise the efforts that go into that by officers within all departments. I'm just going to pick out a few sort of key points. It's no surprise to anybody in this room, I don't think, that we continue to face extreme sort of pressures in the two largest spending areas of adults and children's social care. We had, I think there's a sort of overspend against the budget of 4.25 million and in adults and around 5 million in children's. That's despite the fact that the growth pressures are put in the budget every year to demand that, but the demand just keeps rising and cost keeps rising. That said, there's a lot happening in the background to sort of mitigate those costs, and the situation could be much worse. So in children's, for example, we've invested some fairly significant amounts of capital expenditure into building or acquiring and converting properties to provide in-county facilities for looked after children, and that saves the council a significant amount of money, and some of those budget overspends would be many millions higher if we weren't doing that. So it's really important to understand that there is a lot of work within those teams going on to try and manage those pressures. The overspends in those two areas are largely offset by sort of corporate underspends, and that's around sort of cost of debt financing, around reduced staffing costs, and a little bit around business rates as well, the retained element of the business rates being higher than forecast. So that's the summary position of the overall final settled position. Another reason for sort of underspend is to do with the capital reprofiling. Every year, I mean, again, I've been here for 9 years now. It's happened every single year in the last 9 years, and I think it probably does in most organisations where there's a lot of capital spending going on. But there's quite a degree of reprofiling. Things don't happen as quickly. The council has a duty to forecast its capital expenditure prudently. So that means the earliest point at which it can happen, because it may need to finance this at that point. But things always slip, and they slip for a number of reasons. They slip for a lack of capacity in the construction market, for example. They slip because things take longer to get planning than was originally forecast, and so on. So there's a whole heap of different reasons, but there's been over £60 million reprofiled and 26 million underspent, so it's a total of 87 million. But it's also important to note that a lot of that capital expenditure is sort of partly financed by the council, but also there's a lot of external financing being attracted to support those projects. We've invested over £90 million in the last year in transport, notably much of that into the Northumberland line, which I think by any measure has been a huge success, and is economically really important for that part of the county. So I think we can all be proud of that. We've invested, and we're one of not many authorities are actually doing it, but we've made some significant investments in the last year in education. And we believe it's really important that young people get the best possible start in life. And that's not just about buildings, but the buildings are important. And in some cases, we've had some sort of fairly crumbling facilities that we've had a lack of investment and a lack of maintenance over decades. So, I think we can't continue investing in the education state at the rate that we have been, but I think most of the highest problem areas have been sorted out now. Then we have regular investment that we are required to do. We have to invest in our fleet. Unfortunately, the bin wagons and the gully tankers and everything eventually do pack up, so we need to replace them. And we invest in things like replacement equipment for the fire and rescue service. We're also investing in housing as well. That's not a statutory requirement. We don't have to do that. We obviously have to maintain the existing stock, but we don't build new houses. But we choose to do that. We're conscious that there is in some areas of the county we do need more social housing. We're doing what we can, either to do that ourselves or to use the planning system to encourage other people to do that. And then I think it's probably just worth mentioning, I mean, there are separate reports brought to various committees about this, but the treasury management of the council remains very, very sound. And that's been a feature, I think, for a long time, probably for well over 10 years. But there is a good team looking after the councils, and that's basically the borrowing, the lending, the cash flow management of the council's financial requirements. I won't talk about BESS because we're talking about that later. And I think that's probably all I need to say, but happy to take any questions.
John, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, thanks, Chair. This is a critical report at the end of the financial year, and it also links in to the external audit that's currently, it's about to start on our statutory statement of accounts. They're on the public website. The notice of public inspection opens up. The accounts we did a briefing on council finances. The accounts are quite a technical department, but there is a reconciliation from these almost management accounts to the statutory accounts that we do. So again, that public scrutiny, it's open to the public, but for Ms. Mazars, who are our external auditors, will be undertaking a full audit, and that reports back to the audit committee, audit and standards committee. I don't know the exact date, but it'll be in the autumn. So again, that external validation of what we're saying internally, it gets checked by external parties.
Okay, thank you. Questions, Councillor Fleming?
I think you said that you were something like over £4 million short for adult and children's social care, which is actually a part of the council that I greatly admire. I have to say, I think they do a fantastic job. Well, the people of Seat and Sluice will be happy to give you £13 million that you're spending on putting a cycle park through. So you can have it tomorrow, but we don't want the cycle.
Point taken. I think I've heard that point before, and it's obviously something you feel very strongly about.
I wondered how we was going to get this.
Councillor Dunn?
Yes, thank you. I just want to say that comparing this to last year, we seem to be always at the same point. We're always at roughly the same figures. This year I think there's overspent by about 6 point something million service-wide. Adults and children services always seem to have that same thing. So although we're doing all this transformation work in between, the actual end point never seems to progress very much. So that worries me slightly. And the fact that the only reason the budget balances is because of the underspend on the corporate side of things is worrying to me too. Am I right in thinking that there's been another, I am right in thinking because I've read it, that another report went to Cabinet and that final figure has since this report?
I think the report that went to Cabinet, I think, was the same as this report, or there was a slight change between the report that went to the audit committee, I think, and the one that went to Cabinet because of end of year technical adjustments.
So, there was a between this one and the final outturn, I think it was from memory, it was about 180,000 difference. It didn't change the bottom line position. It was those final accounting entries that we had to do towards the end as part of the.
I was just comparing, you know, the little table that will get the general fund thing for the 9th of June one, which we're looking at, and the one that went to Cabinet on the 7th of July. And just noting that Cabinet, it says the total net expenditure budget has increased by 69.43 million.
That's the, through you, Chair, that's the technical allocation. There's certain things that we have to allocate in, mostly the accounting entries to do with the capital programme. The net position remained very similar. The main change in the service performance was a technical adjustment in relation to the leisure contract to do with the treatment of utilities as part of the contract. But again, with the bottom line position, about £180,000 net change, but it was largely to do with year-end entries. It didn't fundamentally change the service performance.
Yeah, so instead of the 0.438 surplus on the bottom of here, I think it ends up with a minus figure in the 7th of July.
I haven't-
Not very much, but
I haven't got that report open. I think
we're looking at this as the final outturn, and it's not, basically.
I think the report, again, through you, Chair, called the provisional outturn. It's a snapshot in time. We do a mop-up exercise. So Cabinet last week, was it?
Yeah.
Got a slightly updated figure. But again, that'll all get picked up through the external audit.
That's fine, as long as we're aware that it has been updated since here. But my problem is the same, that we seem to end up with these overspends on the children's and adults every year, even though we're doing this great work in between, the transformation and the best and everything, and we don't seem to progress very far with it. So that is a real concern.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one figure of the net position is it's obviously an important measure, but it's not the only measure, because you have to look at what we actually budgeted, and every year there is a significant amount of growth put into the budget, and also the inflationary pressures. So you have a sort of level of activity during a year, and when we come to the budget setting process for the following year, which we're just starting now for next year, you know, the departments put forward what they think will be needed in terms of dealing with growth, and that's the sort of demand growth side. And then obviously decisions are made about what we think the inflationary pressures will be on top of that. So you've got sort of two pots where basically it pushes the amounts up, inflation and growth. And then to counteract that, you've got all the sort of mitigating actions that can be taken to basically reduce those pressures, reduce those costs, find savings and efficiencies in other ways. So what I would say in response is that, you know, we are facing this constant pressure. Our settlement from government over 3 years was about 13 million. That didn't even cover the inflationary pressures, never mind the increases in demand. So we're kind of, it's a bit like a hamster wheel. There's, you know, the wheel is turning very, very fast. But we're still facing that constant increasing demand. But there are things that were in the budget that we all agreed in February this year that are being sort of delivered now, which mitigate some of those in-year costs and will help in the future. But ultimately, the reason that is overspending is because of that ever-increasing demand for those services. In adults, we've got an ageing population in Northumberland. In children's, that we are subject to the same pressures that every other authority in the land is facing, which is an increasing demand for those services. You know, we're all watching with interest what the government decide to do. You know, they've got this sort of big conversation going on about SEN and what may happen there. And we're very involved. Audrey's, you know, very involved regionally, leading on some of that stuff. So it is a pressure, and it's something we're acutely aware of, and it's something that we're monitoring constantly. But that sort of, those one figures don't really tell the story behind all of the activity.
That's fine, but I just think we need to realise that this budget has been balanced because of that underspend on the corporate
Yeah.
services.
Yeah, and that's been that's true often, yes.
Where we could have been. So I think that's just something we need to be really acutely aware of for next year.
Yeah. No,
So,
agreed.
As we've got the Executive Director of Children, Young People and Education in, I'm going to ask Audrey Kingham if she wants to comment on that.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, Councillor Dunn. So I'm going to echo, I suppose, to some extent what Councillor Oliver has said about the increased volumes. It's not just the volumes, it's the complexity. And one of the things that I would want to be clearly said, because the team work on this hard every single day, the savings are not just found from corporate. Children's found a huge amount of savings as well. And we really scrutinise and clearly look at budget spend all of the time. So we maintain our spend control board every Monday at 4 o'clock. We have a high needs budget spend control board. We look at absolutely everything. Very, very conscious that actually we are a high demand and high pressure. So those pressures around our children's residential, which is the aspect that causes often the overspend, we have got, I think, a pretty strong tracker now in place. We've got significant investment from the local authority, and we managed to secure monies from DFE around some complex needs residential. That has mitigated just around 5 million spent this year in terms of the works. Our Children's Homes Board, and some of you may recall, we talked about this at the Best Members Forum. So I asked the team to showcase that. So we look at that. We look at every single post. Every time, you know, a colleague moves on or gets a new career or perhaps retires, we look at every single post in children's and say, do we need that? Do we need that in that way? Do we need to reshape it? Can we do things differently? I just wanted to reassure you that we are cognizant that that's a real demand pressure and the complexity will become ever more challenging. It's not unique to Northumberland. It is a national issue. There are regional developments afoot with a regional care cooperative and a fostering end-to-end service in the whole region, because actually all 12 authorities in the North East face the same challenges. So we are looking at every single opportunity every time, and I wanted to assure the committee that.
John, did you want to add something?
Just thank you, Sarah. Just two quick things. Having worked in a couple of other neighbouring authorities in recent years, these pressures and these discussions are absolutely the right ones to have, but that unfortunately they are the same conversations that's going on. Councillor Dunn, just to your point about the changes, if the Cabinet report that went last week, there's a section in paragraph 8 that shows the movement between the two reports. And at a service level, there's a very minor change. It's mostly the application of year-end changes, but it's set out clearly in that report. Again, for public scrutiny. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Austin, did you have any other?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm looking through on page, was it 47? And we see that the cost of placements is £6,592 per week each. Basically, it's £300,000 a year. Is there any way we can manage the demand? Because we seem to be doing an incredible job at actually, shall we say, managing the care. Is there any way that we can manage the demand and the actual complexity? Can we change it? Can we make it simpler?
Audrey, in fact. I'm sorry, of my numbers.
Yes, is the answer. And actually, the reference I made earlier around the regional care cooperative, that is, it's actually, there's one nationally already set up. There are two actually set up, one in the southwest, one in Greater Manchester. And we have just in the northeast got some way forward around how we might be able to do that ourselves. And it is about managing that demand in a profiteering market. So I'm happy to send through Sean the report done by the Association of Directors of Children's Services, which sets out that competitive demand and the pricing issue. It prices out local authorities essentially, but it's a private market. They sometimes are not able to recruit the staff to be able to meet the demand and complexity of children. You know that our approach in Northumberland is how can we get more of our children much closer to home, and we do that really, really well. However, sometimes I do need children to be out of area. Sometimes it's best for them to be out of area for a whole raft of reasons based on their individual case. And it's really difficult for us to manage that private market and the cost base. There are some behaviours that are, in my mind, morally reprehensible in terms of the costs that they raise and the charges. And sometimes on a Friday we can get a phone call that says, so we're not able to continue with this placement at X amount of price. We can, however, offer a placement from midnight tonight and it will be X amount. We are in a no-win position, and that is really difficult. And with rising complexities, I need the children safe. We're not in a position where we can just say we'll just bring them back, or we'll put them into one of our residentials. Our residential properties currently that are all registered have children in there who are doing really well, thriving, making really, really good progress. And we want that for all of our children. And hence the national approach around how we can do things differently. The current minister is very clear at the expectations that have been set out.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Flower.
I just want to set out something that's just in my mind, really. Often when you get short of money, you concentrate on the money solely, if you see what I mean, where you could take a much broader look at things. I rent a property out in Blythe, and between someone moving out and the next person moving in, there was a week that I was responsible for the council tax. So I phoned the council, told them the figures. They sent me a council tax demand, which was wrong. So I rang them up and explained, and they said, oh, we'll get it sorted out. So they then sent another one through, which again was wrong, followed by a letter saying they're going to take me to court for non-payment if I don't pay it soon. So I rang them up again. They listened very intently, sent another one out, which again was wrong. Eventually I got through, after 5 phone calls, I got through to a lady, very nice lady, sorted it all out while I was on the phone, sent the correct one, I paid it straight away. Now, when I discussed about answering the phone, because I spent 3/4 of an hour every time trying to get someone to answer the phone, I'm now told that the council are going out to a private contractor, I think. They're going to call someone in to work the phone system and make it AI or something. And I just think that the amount of phone calls that the council gets could be drastically reduced if that was done right the first time. There would have been 4 phone calls not made. So just want to point that out.
I mean, it is, I mean, first of all, sorry to hear about the experience in the council tax. And if you send details through, we'll get that looked at. The underlying causes, as obviously it's good to hear it's sorted. I think the wider point about the call centre, it is true that this year we had quite a severe spike. We changed the council tax support scheme at the end of the year. And that was the first time there's been a significant change in the structure of the scheme for a long time, very long time. So unfortunately, council tax bills all have to go out at that same time of year. We are looking at what we can spread to other times of year, so that, because a lot of stuff happens at year end, green bin renewals, things like that. Other things happen like blue badges throughout the year and so on. But there's a lot of process related stuff that sort of does have to happen around that time of year. We are looking at what we can do for next year to try and improve that. We have had some sickness in the call centre, some long-term sickness. That situation is improving. They're slightly a victim of their own success in that department, because a lot of the staff that come in there, that's their first job within the council. And because of the nature of their work, they're seeing all the different services. And often they apply for other jobs within the council. So there's quite a high turnover of staff, but it's not a high turnover of staff of people leaving the council. It's people going on to other opportunities within the council. So that's both a good thing and a bad thing. But there has been some investment. There is the new CRM system, which is, it's quite a major project. It's been long heralded for at least the last 9 years that I know about. Has been procured, that is being implemented now. So between customer relationship management. So it's basically the computer system that the staff that are answering the phone will have access to. It has to be linked into lots of other systems, but there's a lot of work going on in the background. We've got a new director of digital just starting, and another senior person in that department. So it is, it's a major priority for us, and we are aware. We're monitoring the call centre on a week-by-week basis.
John, do you want to answer that?
Whilst it's a new system, the staff will still be council staff who
Yes.
operate that. It's not a private contractor from that perspective.
Can I just point out one thing? Where I live, Sluice, most of the people are in their 70s and 80s. It's like Cobb's waiting room. They don't use computers. They want to ring and they want the phone answered. So they have to give you a backup system.
No, I'm aware of that.
Councillor Austin?
Thank you, Jeff. Two very rapid questions. We've got, on page 26, we've got the Newsham Railway Bridge. Sorry, Newsham Railway Bridge. Is this not the Blythe, a cost for the Blythe Relief Road? That's one. And secondly, about a year ago, we knew that Mowbray School might need repair work. There seems to be no provision for fixing the school within any of our budget figures on the
I'm going to
capital.
bring Audrey in on the school one.
Do you want me to answer school before Blythe Relief Road?
Yeah.
I know.
I think I would know first.
I'm not going to answer Blythe. Happy to talk about Mowbray. So at the moment, there are a couple of things that we've done. One is that there is a submission into DFE for a new school build. We won't know the outturn of that until spring, was the language, 2027. So I don't quite know how long spring extends, but we'll wait with bated breath. And actually, one of the things that we talked about just with my DMT yesterday was, Councillor Oliver talked earlier, we're just about to start a new budget round. So we are currently in discussions around what the proposal goes forward, because I need to have a contingency and a plan around if we don't get a new school build, what's that? So I can assure you we're currently in discussions around that, and that will be a proposal that moves forward for 27-28 budget year.
If our prayers are answered, will that be 100% funding from central government for Mowbray, or will it be partial?
They're usually a DFE build's fully funded.
Yeah.
So that's our hope then, okay.
Not forgetting that this is looking retrospectively, this is 25-26 with the plans, the future plans as was set at that time.
Right, okay, so.
Yeah. John, you
Yeah, if I can take that, it's obviously in the same area as the Blythe Relief Road, but it's the separate capital schemes. And I think the last meeting of this, Sean, I can't remember his name, Stuart McNaughton came and did a briefing on that. This is just moving around pots. The overall scheme of the road bridge didn't cost any more. It was just the account linking in with the external funders. So it's a technical adjustment, but because of the value, it needs cabinet approval.
Thank you.
But it doesn't change the overall scheme. And
Okay.
the Blythe Relief Road, we're waiting on the announcement from Department for Transport. I can't remember what Stuart said the timescale for that, but it was in the last meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. Malcolm?
Thank you, Chair. This road bridge was my first question.
It's still your thunder.
It was, are we building that up into a financially backed project, even though if the government don't approve the 50-odd million, it isn't going to happen? So it's a theoretical project, if you like. Are we backing that with pound, shillings and pence?
I'll have to get one of the team to do, because I know there's the road bridge that's there now. There is a secondary road bridge which will be subject to the next capital programme. I think this technical adjustment of the reallocation of funding relates to the existing one, but I think we need to take that to the highways team if that's all right.
Right, so this might be the one that's there now, the train road bridge.
Yes.
Rather than the dual carriageway.
That's right, and I think from the last meeting, Stuart explained that the phasing of the approvals and it had to be built as two separate bridges, but this is a technical, the reason it's there is an adjustment of the value. We need that permission from cabinet officers, don't have the delegation to move that funding around. Again, that transparency piece, doing it through
My
cabinet meeting.
next question is about the reprofiling of the capital project programme. And again, we're saying it's another 60 million reprofile, 25, 26, 26, 27. And like they said, we'll always say it happened. What I would ask is, are there any capital programs in there cancelled? Or are we just faffing them over until next year? Is it reprofiling or is it?
It's a reprofile.
So they're still there.
They're still there. Yeah, we haven't cancelled anything, and obviously there's a review every year when we reset the budget. But
So it just overruns
yeah,
things.
yeah.
That's fine.
So that gets reprofiled into next year's budget basically, and it all just gets pushed to the right.
And my last question is about the children's care thing. And I would like to ask Audrey, because every year we see it, and to me, we've got sticking plasters on it. What I would like to ask is, what's the root cause of this surge in demand? I mean, really, what's happening with the kids that's producing all these diagnoses?
$1 million question.
Wow. So
News.
this is, a lot of people would say that we see rising demand as a result of COVID. I would say we're seeing an acceleration as a result of COVID. I think the challenges were there before COVID. We've seen that rise over time.
Yeah.
COVID accelerated it. So that's my view. And I think when we look at our data and statistics, we're able to prove it on that basis. So it's not necessarily about diagnosis. It's a whole raft of complexities that build into this. It can be family breakdown, intergenerational family breakdown. It can be a child who has an experience in life that then traumatizes them for the whole life. And you know, we can't always predict that. What I do know is across the whole country, the complexity is, it's manifested back to societal root causes. So behaviour, often parenting, social challenges. Without doubt, we see more challenges where we have more families and households that are typically within, financial challenges, poverty. If we go back 6-7 years, we didn't have significant poverty action plans like we do across the country today. And so add all of that up together, the sum of the parts give us the pressure and complexity that we deal with. So there isn't a single answer to this. We often have this conversation at Children's Services to give you some reassurance, actually. Do we think there is one single thing? No, there isn't. Our complexities around SEND are even more challenging than we've ever dealt with previously. Actually, some of that is in relation to, we have children, babies who survive today, who perhaps 20 years ago may not have survived. So the medical advances have supported those children to survive and be part of a family. And we have a responsibility to look after them and support them and make sure that the family and the children get to the best place with the best services we can provide them with. So it is it's not an easy answer, but I hope that's a well-rounded reasoning.
I fully accept what you said, Audrey. It makes sense. The reason I'm asking is because 10 years ago, when I first came to one of these committee meetings, I asked Councillor Oliver about the overspend on the children's service budget, which was £5 million at the time. I've got a canny memory. And I said, if we're doing an overspend every year, maybe we're not setting the right budget. Are we setting the right budget for this stuff?
Well, first of all, I wasn't a councillor 10 years ago, but it must have been a little bit more recently than that.
It was,
yeah.
you were. Cabinet member?
2017, I got elected, but,
Yeah.
but
Okay,
the.
okay, 9
Sitting
years.
there.
9 months.
But yeah, that's the point I made earlier, really. It gets looked at every year. So there's very detailed, sort of almost blood on the carpet discussions that we have as part of the budget setting rounds where we're looking at the growth and the inflationary pressures in each service area. Those discussions are particularly difficult in children's and adults, and I think it's so there are. It isn't a failure to anticipate demand. It's a sort of accelerating thing that happens every year. It's it has. If you look at the growth in the numbers, and there are. It's maybe overly simplistic, but there are the sort of the more serious care situations where we have the interventions are much more intensive, and the costs are much higher. Sort of the council is responsible for, but also the council is responsible for a lot of the costs around SEN, and SEM is quite a wide spectrum in terms of those special educational needs, but they also come with associated costs in terms of transport and things like that, and that's really hard to predict. And then on top of that, we've had increases there's been a lot of inflationary pressures that weren't necessarily known about at the point at which the budgets were set. So changes to national insurance that get implemented by a new government that has a knock-on effect. A lot of costs in terms of fuel and things like that. A lot of the facilities need to be heated, and the staff are travelling in cars and so on. So there's increasing costs. But it's not for the want of trying to predict it. We are trying to predict a level of demand and expenditure that will come in, but that in year, and some of the numbers, and I mean, it's set out in the report, but that some of the costs of individual care packages are extremely high. So if you've got a situation where 10 extra packages can add millions of pounds to the annual budget in that department, and that's 10 people out of a population of whatever it is, 300,000, and so it's quite stark. But we are trying every year to get it right, but we are facing that constant increasing demand. And just going back to Audrey's point, one thing that she didn't mention, which I think might be impacting, is these and
Social media.
Yeah, and it's great to see the government actually doing something about that.
What do you want to comment back on that?
Just a quick response, Councillor Robinson. So, again, in terms of both our children's residential planning, but also our SEND planning, our place planning, we would typically call it sufficiency planning. So back to that, how do we predict it? So certainly when I arrived in Northumberland 7 years ago, we didn't do that. We didn't have a prediction. We now do have really robust prediction models. And I think in our last children's scrutiny, we looked at the SEND place planning, and actually we're leading the region and nationally around the modelling for that. So other people have not got that. We're ahead of the system. So we know the size of the problem if we do nothing in terms of our numbers, and therefore that, if you like, drives our ambition and our work, and what we particularly choose to invest time in or put proposals in around investment to say, this is the size of the challenge that we are facing in Northumberland in these localities, so we can look at it place-based, particularly around SEND, and then we're able to put the proposals together. We'll get our local areas. At the moment, we're working with all of the schools out the west around a SEND sufficiency plan for them and that's a 5-year plan into the future. We do exactly the same around children's homes, and put in place using that same algorithm, because it's pretty accurate. In the first year of our SEND sufficiency, we were only 5 pupils out. So that's pretty clean and pretty clear in terms of prediction. We do the same around our residential. All it takes is 4 or 5 to be out, which you feel like 4 or 5 is a low number. the cost of 4 or 5 can be significant, millions. And so, so do we build in an extra 5 placements every year and try and predict? And, you know, I'd rather try and get it accurate than over predict and say, we need this amount and then pull it back down. The accuracy of that can be really, it can move quite quickly. So we do very much try around our predictions.
Or if I could just come back, you mentioned COVID there, and a number of things that have potentially led on from COVID and possibly created things and, you know, financial things. Obviously, I was on fax at the time when we had COVID. And throughout there, for many, many people, changed the way we carried out work, plus many, many people. Would it be fair to say that because of the changes in the way we worked, it helped to identify a lot of things that we didn't pick up previously, and helped us to identify things, cases, issues that potentially weren't picked up before, which is, and it's not just for this authority, but throughout the country. And because of the changes in the way we worked, it's helped to lead to the increase in numbers, which, you know, we've then seen, you know, it's because you mentioned COVID. And numbers have significantly increased since that point, and it's not just because of what's been created, but it's improvements in the way we've worked and helped to identify things which maybe weren't picked up before.
It's quite a difficult one because actually we worked throughout COVID pretty much the way that we worked before COVID. So responsibly, all children have to remain safe. There were some aspects that we had to do differently, which actually gave us some different perspectives. And therefore we actually changed the way we worked as a result of that experience. I think it was better as a result, actually. And, you know, even today, some of the challenges we have, you know, attendance in schools and exclusions, you will recall having the task and finish group. Attendance in schools is still not back to where it should be. You know, in Northumberland pre-COVID, it was pretty strong. We were good. It did a big dip, and then actually we're not back to that level yet. And some of that is as a result, again, in my view, we can track the patterns where we have parents who are home working and children, you know, perhaps don't necessarily want to do Mondays and Fridays, and less children are able to fit into a typical school day. That gives us some more challenges more broadly. That's not necessarily as a result of COVID. I think that's much more broadly around their individual needs.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Flower?
I was particularly struck by something you said, because you do a great job. When, you know, someone rings up on a Sunday and says, we can't look after this person at this amount of money, but we can look after him at this increased amount of money. It's blackmail, basically, from what I can hear. Is it possible that we could get in front of this and build far more places, have a big push, build far more places, so that when that person rings up and says, we can't look at him at this amount of money, but we can on this, you just say, no, that's okay, we won't do it. And then, you know, the amount of money that you're spending out starts to go down because you're in control, not them. Do you see what I mean? It's like if you have an area with lots of council houses, you sell them all off, the cost of private accommodation starts to go up and starts to go through the roof. Build loads of council houses, it will start to come down, you know, supply and demand. So could we get ahead, build more places for you so that you are not held to ransom?
Councillor Flower, you mean you want us to borrow some more money to?
Yes, £13 million.
Audrey, do you want to come back on
I
that?
will do, yes, thank you. So a couple of things. I should reassure you that we don't just accede immediately to whatever cost is given to us. Our commissioning team are pretty robust. I wouldn't like to discuss money with them. They're a real challenge, and do not let go. You know, very much cognizant that this is public money that we are spending every single time, very cognizant of that. We do have a significant children's homes programme, whether that we've built one and we're requiring quite a number. I'm going to say that's perhaps easy to say, but the process to get us there is torturous. So I have to get both planning permission and support. That might be change of use. We might need to do some adaptations to houses, etc. But then I also have to go through the Ofsted registration at the same time as the rest of the country are also trying to do this. Mm-hmm. So last year it took us a long time to get the registrations. We actually had the staff in place. We had the properties there, but we didn't have the Ofsted registration, not because we weren't ready, but because Ofsted had a long queue of properties to be able to get the regulatory inspectors to visit and do the inspection and give us the certificate to say, yeah, good to use. We're in a position now where we've got Ofsted coming again in August to look at some more properties, so that will open more. And we are looking very much at, because the first question is, I know I can talk money, but my first question is always children. And then my second question is money. And the team always look to me and know I'm going to ask that, because I am very, very clear that it's public money and we have to be transparent how we spend that. So we look to see which of our children are the most appropriate, perhaps in our external residentials, that we can bring back into Northumberland. And actually, does our property and our facility that they're moving into, does it suit their need? Is it best for them? And quite often our multi-site properties, which are single properties, we will often bring a child back and move into the single properties. And we do that so that we can support them. That's quite a transition for that child. So we have to be able to support them. We then perhaps are in a position to move them into one of our larger children's homes, which aren't large. They're not, 4 or 5 children is the max. And so actually it's a gentle transition back into a more socially broader environment for them. So we will continue to do that. We have a children's homes board that meets every month that is doing this work. And it is like a BATAC board in terms of opportunities that come up, bids that we go in, children that we might be able to move. So it is a daily conversation.
Yeah, do you want to come back on that?
It's a silly little thing, but Northumberland National Park are worried about the amount of people in the park is reducing. And, they want to attract people into the park sort of thing. And it might be an idea that, if you built a children's home in the park, I think you would get planning permission quite easily, gets them away from all the pressures of drugs and social media and all that sort of stuff, and puts them back out into wildlife, so to speak, and would be good for their mental health and, helpful for their outcomes. So do talk to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dungate, you want to raise a question?
Yeah, probably for Audrey again, I'm afraid. But absolutely following on those points, I think we all agree it's fantastic we are investing in homes in this county for our children, which is much better for the children and will also save money. As you've touched on, we are, for example, there's an ongoing application in my ward for an investment in a new children's home in a semi-rural location. A lot of the money for this, buying the home, seems to be coming from a government grant, which is great because it's government money and not Northumberland taxpayers' money as such. But I believe a lot of these homes need to be in more rural locations because the law stipulates that we can't have too many homes in our towns, which means that we are having to invest more in making them in rural areas, which may be a great thing, as Councillor Flowers said, but is that the case? And is that going to cost us more money where we're having to build them where house prices are more expensive?
Not necessarily. So it's about sufficiency and whether there is a need. So We find through planning, for example, lots of private providers will try to purchase houses. They are supposed to check with us in Northumberland as to whether there is a requirement and a need for those placements, so that we don't end up with the earlier conversation around profiteering. It has become, I'm going to say, quite fashionable for conglomerates, companies to buy residential homes in all sorts of areas, actually. There is a benefit to some of our homes being in a more rural space for all the reasons that we've talked about. We need for our children stability, and it may be that we use the more rural areas to give them a stable environment, a safe, open space, where they're able to hopefully thrive. And it is a home. So if you were ever to visit, you would find our homes look like most of our living rooms, actually, exactly the same. And so they should, because they're our children in those residences. It's brilliant that we've got the DFE contribution. That is for very complex needs, and that was very, very specific. And so our need to have something in a rural area was to have a bit more space, so that we've got children with complex needs who've got outdoor space that is safe. So we can have an environment around which they can use the space. We can be confident that they're within that space and we can work with them. I'm not certain that we're going to need lots of homes in very rural areas that will cost high prices. The other thing I have to be mindful of is, whilst I grew up in a very rural area, not a lot of young people today want to necessarily stay in rural areas. They want to be connected into communities, into schools, into social groups, you know, whatever that youth environment looks like, and actually into our transport infrastructures as well. So you have to look at every child on their individual merit and what they need. We think really carefully about the children that move into our homes, and perhaps a child has grown up, moved on, doesn't need that residence anymore. We think really carefully about the next child that joins that group and cohort there. So it's always very individual in terms of our thoughts and processes. I can't say we're not going to need some in rural areas, but my view would be I don't think we're going to need lots.
I think it's important to mention as well, because, you know, there has been a lot of discussion over this. If we purchase a property, it's not purchased for one child, it's the availability to be used for children. And if you were to go down a street, you couldn't turn around and say, that's the one that's used for, you know, the council. It is just the property in a street. And it's more likely that it is well maintained, well looked after, without any issues. You know, the myth that there's going to be police there and etc., you know, all hours of the day and night is just a myth. It is a very well maintained and looked after property, staffed 24/7, etc., etc., and you could not pick it out from any other property in that street.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Councillor.
Just a comment, just really back over you. I think in 9 years being on the council, I think there's about 3 applications came to the local area council for planning for homes that the council were wanting to buy, and every one there was a problem getting them through. We're having site visits. The local residents were up in arms because of what you just said. They thought the police were going to be there, and there was none that was straightforward. So they all took at least a year to get to a planning if they got through that. So it is a question of the planning as well, and the perception from the public that there's going to be trouble. So it's not as straightforward as just buy this house and convert it to a children's home.
That will become less of an issue going forward because of the changes to the planning delegations that are coming forward in October. So many of those decisions will be delegated decisions, and they won't be able to go to planning approvals.
I've got one point that I want to bring up. And it's on page 31. Item 10.11, and it relates to the Northumberland line, and that going to cost us £500,000 to the benefits realisations to the Department for Transport over the next 5 years. So and I might be wrong here, is it going to take us 5 years to prove the benefits of the Northumberland line when we already know that it far outweighs what we actually expected that it was going to do? We already know that we've gone way past what we thought it was going to do. So is it going to take us 5 years to prove the benefits of it? Or is it still going to cost us £500,000?
My gut feel is that this is a requirement that was built into the funding contract, and therefore to monitor it over 5 years. So the reason it's taking it 5 years is because that's the period that the DFT have specified that we do it over 5 years. I'm sure. I mean, we all know the benefits have been huge, but they will still require us to. It's like any government grant; it's usually audited. There's usually some sort of monitoring process at the end that sometimes requires paying people to come in and do that independently. And I suspect that's what is happening in this case. I'm sure the team will do everything they can to keep that figure as low as possible.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. We've had a really robust and welcome discussion about this item. Excuse me, it is an information item, but I would like to ask if there's any recommendations people would like to make for future reports of this type that we can make a note of that we would like to see in any other reports. No. Okay, thank you.
Just
Any chips in at the end?
I was expecting this to do it actually. Just if we get the information ASAP, you know, that's all.
Well, you know, these reports, the budget reports and spend reports come to the committee regularly.
It's actually well past its sell-by date now, isn't it? Because it's up to 31st of March this year.
It just takes some time, is it?
But I've made a point. It is within a gnat's whisker of the actual. Yeah.
That's all.
Councillor Osborne.
A very, very minor point if we could, and that's change the nomenclature, change the way we describe numbers. So we're talking a sort of £30,000. We write it as £30,000, not decimal 30 million.
It's standard accounting procedure for all these reports. Yeah. When I go to the Mayor's Authority on audit and standard, it's all the same type of accounting procedure. Is that right?
Why did some of the figures not show it that way? There was a table in there which we had tens of thousands, which I could actually understand.
It might be that report might be that.
It was a single appendices.
Right.
We would take that on board.
Yeah, take that on board.
Can I mention on that? Just, yeah, it's in the debt recovery report. It's slightly different because they're in thousands of thousands.
Yeah.
Indeed, I understand that. If that one made sense, then I'm looking at.
Not in the finance one, that's in the debt report. Okay, we'll move on, Liz. Sorry, Liz.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, going back to the very first point that I made, can we just have a note to go to Cabinet that we are, you know, the continuous sort of thing, continuous pressures worry me, and the fact that we're relying on this underspends and reserves, and it's just something that we need to be on top of, and reports need to come back to this committee to tell how that's going throughout the year.
Yeah, absolutely. We will be doing that, and we'll make sure that everybody. I mean, obviously, in the budget setting process, there'll be discussion around those growths and those the inflationary pressures and so on.
We need to sort of get the reports that show what they're not just fixing the budget with the underspend, but we're tackling the underlying things.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. We can set out what we're doing to tackle the underlying things. And
Not forgetting that if those are in a particular area, so for example, schools, social care, those will be within those like facts, etc., etc. So those reports will be at those committees. Okay, item 6 is the best report.
So I'll just do a very, very quick introduction. I mean, I think basically, first of all, thank you to everybody that came to the Best Members Forum, which I thought was really, really, obviously presented in a way that brought it to life and actually gave an understanding of the BEST programme that was more about how it affects people, sort of staff working here, residents in our communities, and so that was a really helpful exercise. I thought. I think the BEST is is important, really, really important to the council, but it's also very, very complicated. And I've been doing this role for just over a year now. I'm kind of getting my head around it a bit now, but it's taken me a year of quite important discussions to get there. So hopefully this presentation will sort of help everybody in that respect. There are three core messages around BEST. The first thing it's trying to do is improve service to residents. The second thing it's trying to do is to give staff the tools they need to be able to do their job. And we're trying to sort of remove some of the more mundane procedural stuff to allow staff to concentrate on the important things that are important to our residents. And then the third bit is kind of the bit that sort of sits firmly in my portfolio, which is about trying to save money. We're trying to do things more efficiently. We're trying to deliver more with less money, and that's kind of that basically sets the scene. I'll hand over to Audrey.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Morning, everybody. I wasn't expecting to have so much conversation about children's this morning, so
We cancel the next facts committee.
I know that's how we know it's done. So you've got me today because I am currently the Senior Responsible Officer for BEST. For Jan, I think, has previously presented BEST within the reports at previous committees. And when Jan left us in February this year, I've described it as I've picked up the relay baton and held that until John arrived. And then John and I have worked together, moving to probably, I'm going to say, the new academic year, because I forever live in academic years and not calendar years. And John will take the baton fully in that. I will remain really close and supportive with John in the same way that I was kind of second sat behind Jan in terms of BEST moving previously when we set all the work out. So in your pack, you've got a report. It's a pretty high level report. Gives you some oversight and overview. And I've done that based on the fact that actually we've had the members forum. We've gone through some deep dives in terms of project. I wanted to give you an overview of what the different projects were at the members forum so that you could see what was being done. Actually, I'm going to say business as usual and help everybody to understand where we're getting to. Councillor Oliver's right, it's complex, and so I hope what we've tried to do between John and I is set out in the report some clear views, and we've got some information here. You will get these slides, and between John and I, we'll go through the slides this morning, and we'll introduce Jill as part of that as well. So BEST, really, you know that it's not an acronym, it doesn't stand for anything. It's our transformation programme and it's work that we're doing across all of our services. It's an opportunity for us to ensure that our service focus is really focused on the three core principles that Councillor Oliver's just shared with you. So I guess some of this will resonate with some of the things that I've said earlier when we were talking about spend in particular areas and high cost, complexity and challenge. So it's about the way we do things and taking every single opportunity to bring together the services, how we be more effective, how we be resident and customer focused, and the way of working is an initial stage work. So this year already, we have introduced our employee hub and our the BOC, the Business Operations Centre here for all of the staff in Northumberland. So that takes a time to bed in, and without doubt we'll have some teething problems. Any big organisational change will have some challenges in the first instances. It's working pretty well and staff are positive. I accept that not all staff will be positive about it in the first instance because change doesn't always suit everybody. But we do have some big projects that are well underway and lots of other little ones too. So really important to just, bring us back to, this is about us thinking about how we do things in Northumberland. If you like, we're modernising the approach that we have for you as members, for our residents, for our staff, making sure that we're really effective and efficient. We've also got areas of specific focus. So you'll think about those different areas when we talked about them at the Best Member Forum, such as property, for example. We've already done a number of aspects within the property programme. So we've consolidated the sites in which we work, and we've got some demonstrable progress as a result of that. Data-led performance is one of the areas of programmes that we have been working on. It leads on from our performance and accountability framework. And you'll hear a little bit more about that because John and I asked Jill to come along and just spend a little bit of time just putting a little bit more detail around where we are to date with that and how that works. But really important that that all links back to our corporate spine and actually should resonate with a number of things that you've said this morning, particularly around getting information, being really clear about it, having a routine, when will you get that and what will it say, what can you expect? Particularly, I think I need to say that much of this, the nature of this work is continuous. So actually this isn't just because it's scheduled on the plan I'm going to show you shortly. I guess back to talking about children's homes and budget and placement pressures, that consistent look and review of what we do and how we do it in Northumberland is really core to this programme overall. I'm referencing children's because that's live to me on a daily basis, but I can guarantee that all exec directors are operating in the same way. We're joined and clear about the direction we're going. Most importantly for me, we are changing how we think, how we operate, and streamlining systems and approaches. And we must do that in order to meet those three core priorities. We have a full operational plan, so that is now set out. I'll show you in a second. It's aligned to the medium-term financial plan, and it's dynamic because things change. So if I think about Mowbray, for example, this time last year when we set the plan out and we set out the MTFP, Mowbray, the children were in Mowbray and operating. We now need to think differently about that. So having these core principles of how we do things and the way that we work are absolutely resonating throughout the challenges that arise throughout the year we've not yet planned for, but actually have a full plan around how we do things here. I also wanted to mention that not only is it within the medium-term financial plan, it's aligned to our budget setting process. And of course, our service reviews that colleagues talked about very clearly. We use our value for money process, which we annually complete in all of our service areas to highlight those areas that we think need an accelerated or an early service review to be able to see, do things need to be done differently in that service area? So we've got a number of processes, and I think this is why it talks to Councillor Oliver's complexity around the BEST programme. I think John and I aim to try and simplify this and make it nice and clear for everybody if a resident asked us, if a member of staff asked us, if you as members ask us, we should be able to clearly articulate simply. And I'll talk about comms later on. Move to the next slide. So just to show you, that's tiny, and it's just to illustrate. You will get these slides, so please don't try and read them. It's simply to illustrate that that's 2026 and 2027 on there. If you went further backwards on the spreadsheet, you'd see 2025, and if you go forward, you'd see 2028, and it aligns to the medium-term financial plan. And that will change. So you'll see down the left-hand side our big projects that are noted in the report, and you'll see some of the milestones that we monitor. Our project management office look at each of those milestones, and if we don't hit those milestones, there is a cost to the programme. So that's why our project management team look at that really carefully and make sure that they keep everybody on track. Because if we plan to make the savings in a particular period, then we need to make sure that we're cognizant as if there's a slippage. We talked about capital programme slippage earlier. Then we're aware of that, and it's not a surprise. It's not a whoops moment in any way, shape or form. So this is scheduled on a plan. It's available for everyone to see and shows us really clearly the projects that we are working on.
Well, thanks, Chair. Just there's a placeholder here on the presentation, but when we circulated, there's a series of summary slides on each of those 6 projects, but we were just mindful of time. The cover report that came out in advance gave a brief overview, is a little bit more detail, and it adds to the information in the member forum. So it was just to say that we're included in the pack for you to look at when it's circulated. But we just thought we would move on to a deep dive, and it was one of the topics that was specifically asked out about at the member forum. So we asked Jill to come in, who's leading on that project. So I'll hand over to Jill.
Okay, Jill.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Jill Davison. I'm Head of Policy and Performance here at the Council, and really happy to talk to you about this project, Data-Led Performance. The aim of this project, I think it encompasses those 3 visions, those 3 principles we've been talking about with BEST. It's really about consistent, timely performance measurement, and it's through streamlined and automated reporting. Now that sounds quite technical, but it is about being efficient. We want to streamline our data, we want to make it more automated, and really that's to reduce the time spent on collecting data, improving the access for the multiple systems we have. We're a very large organisation, a complex organisation with lots of legacy systems, but this is really about being data-led. So that's getting the information in the right place, so it's more integrated. We have a more transparent view of data to inform those decisions. Audrey's talked about, you know, the prediction models, the data, the evidence that we use throughout all services. And so this isn't also something new we're inflicting. We are doing this in places across the organisation. The project is to get this more consistent, embedded, and strengthening that ability for our staff, so making it easy for our staff to make the systems work better, so that we can also then see, track and monitor the interventions that we make. So you'll all be used to, as councillors, getting performance reports, and I used, in the good old days, it was RAG rated, wasn't it? Red, amber, green. You know, what are we doing with those reds? This project is really taking into account not just reporting performance, but managing performance. So we will look at the interventions that we do to those red performance indicators, track the actions and monitor the measurable improvements. So it's more about, well, it's about the data being able to manage the performance. And a key thread through this is providing members with clear, accessible and visibility of performance information. We do hear that loud and clear around performance. So this is, you know, my role as head of performance. You'll have seen me presenting the quarterly performance reports on the corporate plan and that corporate layer. This is around getting the consistency, so it's all joined up. Audrey mentioned that corporate spine. There is a diagram in this pack that you'll get that shows how that all now will link together, from the corporate plan to service plan, all the planning and doing to the monitoring of it. So the vision, you know, it's clear, data-led organisation. What does that mean? It is being more consistent. We are modelling good practice that we're already doing. This isn't something completely new where it's going to be supported by governed performance data. We have some strong areas. You know, this is all around, you know, information governance. So all the data governance, data stewards, data quality, making sure that the right data is being reported with clear roles and responsibilities for us all in services. You know, who owns the system, who owns the data, and also getting that one version of the truth that everyone will strive for. But this is utilising the strengths of technology that we've got I'm working very closely with the head of data. We're doing a lot of this work now, so we're utilising the technologies to be able to make this a success. And the impact, the reason we're doing it, less time collating the data. As I've mentioned, we have legacy systems, we have a lot of spreadsheets. Spreadsheets are great, but spreadsheets don't talk to one another. Spreadsheets don't create your dashboards. And it's reducing that time to create the reports. So more time can be spent on higher value support, managing the performance, greater confidence in the numbers. That one version of the truth is hard to achieve when different services are collecting their data on their own spreadsheets and making their own calculations. This the data engineering part of this will just take the data straight from the system to one place. So it's not relying on manual input into spreadsheets. The systems will go to one central point. So that improves the trust in that corporate view. And also that enables us to be increase the readiness and the confidence around statutory returns and regulatory challenge. We are a complex organisation. There's lots of statutory services, lots of different departments of government that we have to do regulatory reports to. So that's also a strand of this project, to ensure that we have all those regulatory and statutory requirements in order, and we know where all that data is coming from, and it's clear evidence. And again, as I said before, transparency. And just there are a few more slides, but I suppose this gives you the deeper dive into the project, the 3 specific areas of focus that we are going to be working with across all services. And this isn't and can't be a big bang. This won't just happen to all services and be operational from January. We have to do this in a phased approach across services. But the 3 areas are around strengthening that data governance, so there's clear data ownership. As I said, different services have different systems. So we are setting a data management framework to set the data standards, and introducing sort of data stewards. That's not introducing a new job, that's introducing a new responsibility. So the head of service, is the data steward of the data in their area. The reporting and analysis, this is where I talked about the systems being able to be drawn into a central data platform. Again, this isn't something new, it's not something we need to purchase. This is just new technology that we have been developing, have been utilising in the Microsoft environment. It's just the more technical part that the head of data and John's digital and IT team look after, but it's around taking that data from systems to a platform that then will be able to increase the use of Power BI to report it. And that's more visual data reporting on performance, and we'll look at the capabilities of drilling down further into data. And we are going to be exploring in this AI capabilities to assist with performance analysis. So you may be using it at the moment. You ask ChatGPT or other are available, but you ask AI, what is this telling me? So we will be factoring some pilots in to see how we can get some performance analysis on the data. So it's not just presenting you with lots of charts and dashboards. You will be able to ask questions. And the final strand is around that management part of it, the bit that's in my remit. It's around how do we manage performance? Or heads of service, directors, are there having monthly meetings? Are they recording the actions needed to take interventions? Are they then followed up? It's that culture and behaviour and ways of working of managing performance. I don't know how we are for time. But, this was just what early works happened in the project. We are developing all those models. We are taking that phased approach, test, learn and grow. We're starting in housing and children's. It's very specifically chosen. It's not just because Audrey's sat here, but children's have quite developed all their data systems and data sets are already in that fabric environment. There's lots of these services that are nearer to this vision, some are further away. We will go in and do service discovery, and they'll be at different points of maturity. So this isn't, we're not starting from a zero baseline of nobody does this. There's lots of services that already do this. Children's is one of them. So that's the test, learn and grow, making sure that we can then model that against other areas. And housing, we're responding to some of the data and performance highlighted in the inspection report. Next slide. That's just what I've described there. We'll go in with an assessment of their current maturity, highlight the main issues, make some of the improvements, and get the outcomes to that vision. We'll have a prioritisation plan of which services to target first and work through, and that'll be evidence-led, where we go for which services first. Next slide. That's that link to the corporate spine. So as you see on the left-hand side, we have the corporate plan that sets out our priorities. Directorates have their priorities and they set their annual service plans against the budget of what they need to deliver, and they have operational delivery. The right-hand side is the review and improve. So this data-led performance is enabling all that to happen. So as I say, a lot of this is already happening. We're making it more efficient and more consistent, so that the right information feeds those meetings. I think might be, yeah, this was just about members' assurance. The current performance reporting that we bring to councillors will continue. The quarterly performance reports, it will go to EMT and SLT. That same report will go to the scrutiny chairs meeting. We've agreed with scrutiny chairs so that they can see the report to feed into all your work programmes, and then specific scrutiny committee agenda items. The service or that issue topic will bring their performance report here. The cabinet and the council reports remain. And this was just to say that this is a phased project. How, you know, we use the term test, learn and grow, but councillors and members are down as key stakeholders, so engagement will be planned, and obviously there'll be ongoing communication and updates brought to members. I think our final slide was just well, that's the 4 work streams and how we're working across in phases. And then the final slide was an easier one that they get to see, that we are piloting it. We roll it out through services and consolidate it. I suppose the easiest way to describe it is once we've gone through all the services and the data is in the platform and we've got a more consolidated approach, I then want to make sure that corporate approach, with some user testing with members and the public, what do you want to see, what can you see, and that we get the further visibility and transparency, and then explore that AI. So that's sort of the phased approach. So I'll answer any questions.
So, over to me, Chair, just a couple of slides, again, just to give the reassurance. Risk management, it's important that we have this, but just to Audrey's point before about best not being separate to everything else we do, it is fully aligned with the core risk management report. She goes to Cabinet twice a year, goes to Audit and Standards. Kevin MacDonald, who's the head of internal audit, the chief internal auditor, is a core member of part of that governance. It's really important that we're managing risks actively. And just by way of example, and using some of the data principles, we're using dashboards, we interactive, you can click on risks and drill down. We actively manage the risk with BEST in the way that we do with the Children's Homes Project or the Northumberland line. Again, it is vitally important. So including that just to give members the sort of detail that operationally we're looking at. We thought that it would be really important to summarise where we are with the budget and the benefits. All of the information is in the public reports, the budget setting process, the financial reporting that we've seen. We just try and decant that into a single slide. This project of this size, and it was one of the attractions for me coming into the council, I am put on record, I'm grateful to giving us that phased approach to get up to speed. Over the period of the BEST programme, from a revenue perspective, a sizable project budget was created to reflect the size and the culture change and the nature of the change that the journey we were going on. A little over 24 million, of which 16.5 million to date has been spent. So that will continue to be spent moving forward on staff and some of the resources. That doesn't include the capital investments in things like children's homes. That's in separate budgets. But we have, off the back of that, seen some savings to date. So up till the end of the last financial year, the target was to have achieved £11.2 million. The current savings have been identified at 5 million, but non-recurrent, so one or two off savings that have been done just shy of 50 million. So that service approach, the BEST approach, has already generated in the region of £20 million of savings. And on the right-hand side, you can see for that investment of £24 million, these figures are either have happened, they're in the budget already, or in the medium-term plan going forward. Some ambitious targets for this year, into next year, and through to 28-29, the end of our medium-term financial plan. So it is a sizable investment, but it will generate recurrent savings of over £53 million. And then that continuous improvement will continue to reinforce the savings that we expect to come from that investment that's being put in. Governance as well as risk management, it's vital that you wrap some governance around this. Oops, sorry, clicked on too many slides. We're following government best practices called the Teal Book. It's at 3 levels: strategic, programme and project, supported by what we've called the Business Design Authority or Technical Design Authority. If we need changes to the way we operate on a service level, or if we need technical changes, we're bringing in the right people to get that design. It's not just me as an individual project manager going off and doing my own thing in isolation of everyone else. And there's a chart which I wasn't going to go through in detail, but just to give you the comfort from Cabinet down through Councillor Oliver, but then it operationally through the exec management team into the programme board. And we set out who attends those boards to give you that reassurance that we are applying strict governance to this project. And I'll hand back over to Audrey for communications.
Thank you, John. So members will have seen and heard some of this from members forum, but it was completeness, we've added it in here. Just to remind everybody that there was a budget amendment around, could we simplify the communications around BEST? And so we've been really clear about who we want to communicate to, why we want to do it, and then how we're going to do it. So we can flip to the next slide. What we have started to do, and this will be our web pages, they're now agreed and signed off, and you'll start to hear these and see these. I also intend to make sure that we send the links to these in your member briefings that come through. I think you get those from member services routinely. So any updates and any changes will happen. So website will have lots of icons, so you can see the corporate detail there, the corporate model, if you like, and the corporate branding. It's really important that it's aligned, so it's not seen as something separate. I'm hoping that this morning you've got the sense of this is happening and it is part of the council, not necessarily something that's separate and being done to us we are doing this. We are working our way through this whole programme. So if we go to the next slide, please. So what we have there are some beginnings of almost like, I've described it as a member guide to BEST, and that's one of the things I've asked the team to do, so that we can use this as a baseline and then routinely start to build the information. You know, if we were in school and you were learning a new topic and you were introducing a new topic, you would do it gradually and you'd build upon that and you'd scaffold the learning each time. So we intend to do that. And this isn't just for members, it is for staff. My view is, and I shared this at members, that I don't think we've helped staff to understand what BEST is really all about. And so therefore, this buildable approach will be something that we use with staff as well as with members. And then ultimately, we'll probably talk to residents about this, because as residents see and feel differences. So when our customer experience transformation, that customer front-facing changes, they will need to know what that change is, why we're changing, what it's all about. And we need to explain, tell the story really clearly, really cleanly and simply as best we can, so that we can help everybody understand. I think.
Yeah, well, just to summarise, I think just to recap, I think it's really important that BEST is a key factor to that balanced budget, to some of the discussion we had in the previous topic. But it's changing, it's not a sticking plaster, it's fundamentally trying to change what we do. We have used external partners and we will continue to use some on specific projects, but we've been really keen to build our own team with the knowledge transfer into our staff, so it becomes more self-sufficient into the longer term. Whilst BEST is important in itself, it isn't a standalone project or programme. It needs to become the day job, the normal activities, and some of that will include a cultural shift. So when you see the pack, and you might have picked up the information pack, but there's the pact. It's the new vision and values that we've developed for staff. BEST is a fundamental part of that, and it will require people to work differently. We'll use technology differently where it is appropriate, and we will be asking customers, so both internally and externally. A lot of the work up till now is being for our internal, the ways of working in the employee hub. In time, it will be external people. We'll ask them to work differently, but retaining that choice. So, Councillor Flower, to your point about some people won't be able to access digitally, but a lot of people will, and we're mirroring where society's going. People now, if you're insuring or taxing your car, it's completely different to say 5, 10, 15 years ago because of technology, but we recognise that not everybody will do that. So we will try to shift people to more efficient or cost-effective ways of working, but we'll retain telephone contact or face-to-face contact for those who need that. And Chair, I think that was everything we were wanting to cover.
Thank you. Just before I move to questions, a couple of things I want to raise myself. There's been a lot of mention of members' forums, and just mainly for any members of the public who are watching. Members' forums is for reasons of transparency. This is nothing secret behind closed doors or anything like that. All it is members themselves might raise questions with officers, send a lot of emails, what's this about, and have some more information, etc. So regularly, officers run members' forums about many subjects, whether it's BEST, whether it's finance, lots and lots of different subjects, to provide a group session to all members about that subject, so they can pass on in one session just general information in a bit more detail, and from that they get back what might be contained in a report to the next scrutiny or the next whatever meeting that contains. So it's a bit of a two-way street, but it provides a greater depth of information to a wider audience, rather than just the phone calls, can you help us with this, the emails which go back backwards and forwards and take up what can be a significant amount of officer time. So it's better to run these member forums, and it also helps with some of the newer members as well to provide that great information. There's nothing goes on in secret behind closed doors, no decision making at all. It's just an exchange of information. One thing I wanted to pick up on is Jill, you provided a lot of good information about the data and reporting there. I felt like I was back at work. But I've mentioned before about the reporting, you know, the Power BI, etc. And for those people who are not familiar with Power BI, it is a standard reporting suite. And it will give a greater amount of access to information. And those members who've you know, been with us a lot longer will be familiar with received report packs that are like that. And from that, you look at information and you think, I want to know a bit more about this. Can I have a report on it? I want to know a bit more about that. Can I have a report on it? And it should help to do away with a lot of that, because you will have access to that information already that you can drill into. You shouldn't be able to break. I've tried to do it many times accidentally at work. And if you've got the right access, you shouldn't be able to break it, but you can drill down to it yourself, you know, at your leisure. But what it might do is possibly lead to different content in meeting reports, in reports in meetings, because you've already got access to the information. You might say, and we have a report on this instead. So it might change what we have in scrutiny reports from that point. So from that, Councillor Flower, you were the one that had your hand up first.
Yes, AI, okay. You seem to feel that computer systems never go wrong. I mean, everyone in the post office knows that's wrong. When I see slides go up that say that the computer's going to have one version of the truth, and all the information is going to feed into the corporate spine, sends a shiver up my spine. It really does. You know, you're sort of putting all your eggs in one basket, I think. In fact, what I think you're actually doing is building a firewall between yourselves and the people out there. You know, older people, anyone under 45 will probably breeze through this. People like me in my 70s, not a chance, you know. I tried dealing with the council and I said that I was having problems with the computer system. So they sent me a link through that I could go on the computer and get what I wanted. I can't do it. You know, I'm a plumber. I used to hit things with hammers for 54 years. I don't use computers. And I think you're going to isolate and just a great section of the public. I really do.
Just before I go to Nick, I worked in a mobile company a number of years ago, and listened into a call from a lady who was 92. Okay, came on with a query, and completely blew me away with her level of knowledge on mobiles, connectivity, data. Please don't assume.
I can only talk from personal experience.
And it far outweighed our technical department on her knowledge. Even they were confused at what she knew. Nick, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I just want to provide some reassurance. This is not about forcing people to go into some Power BI or Microsoft Fabric or whatever to get information for themselves. We have a lot of systems, computer systems, apps, programs, as they might have been called years ago or whatever, that are all separate. And different bits of information are stored in different places. What this is an attempt to do is to bring all of that information together in one place, so that the people that need to use that information on a sort of professional day-to-day basis can have access to the right information, to the information that is sort of joined up. It's a little bit like patient records in the NHS. So you've got a situation where you might have one system for booking an operating theatre, one system for making an appointment, one system for the actual medical records and stuff like that. And what they're gradually trying to do is bring it all together so that the information is all in one place. And people have access to it. So what that does is it makes it more efficient. You're not scrabbling around logging into different systems. It also makes it more accurate, and it makes decision making better. So that's the kind of purpose. It's just really about tools in the background. This is not about Mrs. Jones in Acacia Avenue is going to have to deal with complex AI systems to pay a council tax bill or get a green bin collected.
So you're assuring me you'll still be able to answer a phone within
Yes,
an hour?
and hopefully what it will do will reduce the number of calls so that people that can use digital services, and there'll be digital sort of, we're improving the website at the same time, but this is not about forcing people into digital. This is about the sort of central management, but it will mean that there are fewer calls so that staff can spend more time in the call centre dealing with the more complex inquiries and solving those problems. The basic stuff can be kind of dealt with automatically.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, just to reassure you, I think Councillor O'Leary has said this is about being more efficient for the staff, the tools, so that I think we very much will present information to the audience. So once we have the data, it can be put on a poster, it can be, we'll just have the accurate data to be presented. Councillor O'Leary said we're not expecting customers to use this. But I think a big impact of this project, and to your example of being able to answer that there'll still be staff answering the phone.
Lovely.
We will have the data, the performance data to tell us when are the peaks, when are the phones more busy. We'll have the data to then merged in to go, what's the resource allocation? Do we need more staff and there's more calls? This is around being data-led, evidence-driven. So if we get the data right, the service provisions will be better. I don't like to say it's a lot back office, but performance data should drive our decisions and make services better for residents. That's the bit that you'll see, better for residents.
Great.
Councillor Austin, you were next.
Thank you very much. I'll do the little bit of training on data integrity with we have published data sets available, so you can actually see what is data, because it's all very well and good knowing there's data there, but what data do we have? I ask that because if you go to a site like LG Inform, you can then look through all the data categories that you have and then build your report. Are we looking at something similar for ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of public data sets, LG, Inform, collate all of those. I don't think we need to replicate that.
Oh, indeed, no.
That's all Northumberland data is there. Those are the regulatory returns that we give to Department of Education, Department for Transport. That's already publicly available. What we will be working towards with this, and I think I mentioned there, I want this very user-centric and user-driven. What do public members want to see? We want to get the website more transparent so that we are publishing performance data. So we will be working towards that to publish our performance data.
When we see what data sets are available, because at the moment, for example, we can see, say, invoices on one part of our transparency. It would be nice if we knew that not only there's invoices, but we could actually have a look at say, how many people are in houses, how many people are in houses by month, and so on. Will that sort of data?
Yeah, we can work through that to make sure that we are giving you the right information that you
But we'll
want.
have a directory showing what is available.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Bainer.
Thanks, Chair. I had another appointment, so I couldn't make the forum, so apologies if this question's been asked, but I have asked it. I think it was either one of these meetings or the audit on this. I mean, obviously, we've got to go through this. All large organisations have to go through it, best practice. But how confident are you of carrying the staff? In my role, I try to talk to as many staff members as possible, and living in the town all my life, I know quite a few. And I know you talked already about having the hub and etc. But the majority of staff I've talked to, it's been more negative. They can kind of see what you're trying to do, but it's a negative attitude because they feel like they're not being brought along with it. Having the hub, obviously, that's just been introduced. But are you confident that you can bring your staff? Because if you haven't got your staff, it's never going to work. I've had a lot more negative ideas or opinions on it than positive. In a big way, it's a small amount of positive.
Well, if I just to make a comment, and then Audrey will possibly on have more detail, but I think we have had discussions about that quite regularly, and it's really important that in any change management program that the people that change is happening with or happening to are sort of kept on board. But it also is true that sometimes there is resistance to change, and sometimes you have to do it anyway, and so there will be changes. But the teams are working really closely with staff to try and get everybody on board. We see the communications that we get copied into. Audrey's talk today about improving that still further for staff, because it's complex, as I said earlier, and everyone's thinking, what does it mean for me? Will I be asked to learn new things? I'm 55 years old, and I don't want to learn a new role or whatever. I'm retiring in 5 years or 10 years or whatever, and those are sort of normal human reactions, but also there's a counter side to that as well. This is providing greater opportunities so people can spend less time on drudgery and spend more time dealing with actually helping people and doing things that are more satisfying and actually making more of a difference. So it is complex, and we are having regular discussions about that and making sure that the people are carried with the programme. But it is something we have to do. We have a duty to our residents to deliver services more efficiently.
I totally agree. It has to be done. But the reasoning I'm getting behind is that you seem to be putting things into place and you're not taking staff along with you. Now, this hope might help a lot more. But what all the comments I've been getting is this is being done. You will accept it. It's not work with us.
Yeah.
So it's communications between.
I think that there's more we can do on communications, no doubt about that. Yeah.
I would agree. So part of the reason, the simplification of the communication for me is really important. So we will do much more of that. We have worked with all of the trade unions without any complexity or difficulty. The consultations, I appreciate very much that when colleagues are part of consultations, then that is difficult for them. So I do understand and do appreciate that. I am assured that we are working alongside directors, exec directors, whoever is doing the consultations are really well supported. I also expect that when we do change, some people won't like the change. I have had comments made to me, why do we need to change? We've always done it this way. And for all the reasons that we've shared this morning, this authority needs to modernise. We are significantly behind other authorities' processes and systems. And I am very cognizant of working with people and talking. I have offered to go to all teams and talk about best. Not many have taken me up on that, but I'm always very happy to do that. And I've offered that prior to being the senior responsible officer. In children's, we talk about it at every DMT. It is a really core process and system. And I'm confident that my managers talk about it. Whether or not people always want to hear what you're talking about is a difficulty. And I appreciate that those who are unhappy are much more likely to say they're unhappy than those who are happier about it as well.
Councillor Jackson.
Trevor asked the same question as I was.
Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. I don't really know if I should say that.
You will do anyway.
I can't believe that it's taken this best system that will pour millions of pounds into to modernise the council, to try and make it more customer focused, to try and make the outcomes better and all the rest of it. I just can't believe it wasn't already embedded within the council. It should have been. So that's a failure that we're trying to address. That's what I see as that. I also see it as a typical public sector exercise and begetting themselves. That's just my view, right? You know, it's full of little. If you like. So that's my take on Beth. I think we should be doing it. I just can't believe it's not already embedded within the council. Why everyone had to put millions of pounds in, but never mind. So I've got a couple of specific questions. The property transformation, does that include the whole of estates? Or is it just the buildings that we currently use?
So on that, it's basically, it's a phased approach. So they're going through a bit area by area. So I think the southeast was the first area, and it's consolidating buildings and where staff are located. First of all, to reduce cost by having fewer buildings where we don't need so many buildings, to make sure that services are in the right place to deliver for the local populations. And then basically, yeah, so I think ultimately it will be everything, but you can't do it all at once. So, yeah.
I tell you why I'm asking, because I'm sick to death of this bit of land. Who owns it? No one will take responsibility for it. Is it NCC's? Is it somebody else? I get that every month. I'm getting that sort of thing. So I'd be interested in, when we get through this, if it includes everything, as you said, and we get a full breakdown of everything NCC owns.
Yeah, there is a map on the council's.
Yeah, I know, but problems with that as well. That doesn't show the current or the past. What happened was local government reorganisation in 2009. The districts didn't put the right information in.
Right. If there are issues with that, can I suggest that if you write to Richard and I, because we have sort of, as cabinet members, estates sort of kind of sits across both of our portfolios. In specific examples, we can have that addressed. I've looked at that map quite often, because you'll get people ringing up and saying, well, why aren't you looking after that piece of land? You go on the map, you find you don't own it, and then you can go to the land registry and see who does own it. But sometimes land is not registered. There's some land in Riding Mill, which has just come into my ward. Nobody knows who owns it. People that have lived there for 70 years don't know who owns it, and that is an issue, but it's not our land. So all of our land is registered at the land registry.
Right, data-led performance. Are we including KPIs, targets, that sort of thing in there so we can measure the improvement, if you like?
Yeah, this is all around performance data. So that will be like the example I gave, the call waiting times. So all the KPIs are being reviewed. So at a service level, a directorate level, and we're putting in sort of minimum standard or some performance types. So does it measure quality, customer service, value for money? So each service area directorate level will have those performance measures that'll have tolerances and targets. So that's what will be displayed on these dashboards and reported. And as I say, we can report them in any way. So, and we'll be coming to councillors to see what they want.
I look forward to seeing them. The KPIs. Just the last one, probably for John, the budget. The best transformation programme was assigned 24.5 million to 23-24. I was here when the best transformation project was first announced, and we put 9 million pounds into it, 3 million over 3 years. So tell me how that's jumped to 24.5. And if Audrey's having to do this, I thought we employed somebody to manage this programme. That was about 2 years ago. We employed somebody to manage this.
So on the history, I don't know if Councillor Lover does that. In terms of there is a best lead, but Audrey, it'll transfer across to me, is the exec sponsor, as it were. But yes, there's a team led by David Lester, who's on holiday. That's why he's not here today. But yeah, there is somebody who's been in about 7 or 8 months, I think he's been. And there was roles before.
Yeah. So a question about the jump from the 9 million we agreed to the 24.5 million, which I'm presuming you're going to say we've agreed subsequently.
Yes, I am. Read my mind. I think it was. I mean, I can't remember the 9 million figure specifically. So, but I imagine what happened was that was a figure to get the thing started, and then as it got started, the sort of the boundaries of possibility got explored, and the program got sort of developed, and then costs were assigned against those the things that were being done as part of the program. I think the key point to make on the expenditure is that the expenditure on the changes is one-off expenditure, whereas many, not all, but many of the efficiencies and savings are recurrent. So they basically happen every year in perpetuity, so I think it's really important we don't compare one-off expenditure with recurrent savings, because those recurrent savings
I'm not sure I agree with your recurrent savings.
Right.
But I'm an accountant, so I'm not changing figures from one side of the balance sheet to another.
Well, we're not. Yeah, it's basically saying that you get the savings every year. You spend the money once.
Yeah,
you
but
get savings over and over and over and over again.
Total, your ongoing accounting it in an annual budget, surely that stops, and then you start
On an annual basis, you put in what you're going to save or spend during the year.
You're rolling it over.
Yeah.
You're doing savings all the time. It just gets rolled over. That's how you end up with 53 million on what you showed there.
Chair, can I just on the chart, when the savings are made in a 1 year and they're taken out of the budget book. So when we've got the new savings for next year, it's an additional set of savings, 40 million, and then a further 40 million each time the budget book will be amended, and we'll not spend that. And it'll then get monitored through the quarterly budget monitoring reports that we've been discussing earlier on the agenda. So it's not the same 40 million rolling forward, it's an additional one between 28.78 and 28.29.
There's no double counting, but if you didn't make that saving, so let's say we made £10 million worth of savings last year, we would have to have £10 million more in the budget this year, which would mean, to balance our budget, we would have to find £10 million worth of efficiencies or savings in another area. So it isn't being double.
You take it out, so you lost it, so you don't have.
Yeah, but if you didn't get it, you would
overspend it. Yeah.
It's according to them figures, you've got some substantial savings to come.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, double next.
It's challenging.
Year.
It is really challenging.
And 3 times nearly the year after.
Yeah.
Are you confident?
Reasonably. Well, it is hard. I've got to be, upfront about that. It is going to be challenging. It really is. And
what you said about inflation and the cost of inflation.
No, it is really important. It is challenging. Yeah.
Councillor Dunn, you were next.
Yeah, thank you. I've got a couple of questions on the report and the agenda. Paragraph 6.3, the customer experience transformation, and it starts off by saying about the new platform, etc., and how the aim will be to start by reducing demand to the council by leveraging the resources within communities and partners to resolve issues. Can you just explain that? I just need some clarity on that, exactly what that means. Secondly, getting on to, I think Malcolm asked the questions as well. Are we currently employing any external consultants on this?
Right. So take the first.
Thirdly,
sorry.
The report says that when the customer service transitions to the new platform, the housing is going to be one of the first ones to take it up. Given the recent report we had on housing, do we consider this to be a good idea, or should it not be something with less of a risk in it? Is it going to complicate matters?
So, okay. So the first question was
Paragraph 6.3.
Oh yes.
Communities first. Was the answer.
Oh, yes, yes. So yes, about community engagement. So the whole community first project, which has sort of been it's been some sort of scrutiny and it's really about engaging with communities. So it's not always the best way to do things centrally from the county council, and we are looking for every opportunity to work within local communities to try and manage demand. So often you can actually reduce the demand on a central council service by an early intervention within the community that helps people avoid the need for those council services later on. So it's a proven model. It's working really well. It's supporting local services within our communities. And it's a partnership approach. So that's the the explanation on that. Can you just remind me what the next question was? Sorry.
Currently employing any external.
I think the external consultants.
The main block of external consultants are being wound down and should be finished by probably the end of August. There will still be some specific technical where we don't have the in-house or in the data-led performance. We've brought in a performance specialist for a relatively short period of time to get that knowledge, and the knowledge transfer to our staff is the key thing. But it's increasingly reducing the general reliance on externals.
Yeah. And we're trying to build the sort of capability within. So what best, I think Audrey made the point that best sort of becomes part of the normal way of working, constant improvement. And if we have that capability in-house, that will enable that to happen. Final question, sorry, I've got terrible.
Third one was the transition for the housing services.
Yes, so I think I would sort of almost turn that on its head and say it's really important that we the housing inspection identified not an issue with our housing, but it identified an issue with our sort of record keeping and our data. So by making that one of the first services to be sort of brought on board, I think we're responding to that report. So I'd say rather we've got to we need to act in response to the inspection. We're bringing in these process changes, this new system. So let's do both together and that's a reason to choose housing.
Councillor Flower, I'm going to make that the last one.
Okay, it's just you're moving a lot of services over to sort of computerized, artificial intelligence, etc., streamlining it. I can see why you're doing it, to save money, save time and effort. But it's rather like air traffic control. Can you make sure you've got a backup if the computer goes down and it all goes wrong, and make sure that the services are still delivered manually if it does go wrong?
Yeah, I think that's part of the resilience and the governance. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So that item was for the note, the report, and we will receive updates to best by further reports at this scrutiny committee. Okay, item 7 is the debt recovery update.
Chair, before you go on, sorry, I just want to apologise. I have another meeting at past, so I'll have to go in time to get there. I'm really sorry.
All right, no problem. Thank you. Nick.
Right, well, I'll do a very quick introduction, and then obviously we'll take any questions that if anybody has any. This report is a sort of regular report, and it really is about sort of satisfying us all as members that the council is doing everything it can in terms of efficiency and effectiveness to recover its debt. The report summarises the actual debt levels at that point in time, but it also summarises what recovery action is taken, and finally, in the event that recovery action isn't successful, what debts are written off. I'll pick out a few sort of key points, and then I'm sure there'll be other questions, but I think one of the key things for me was the 50% reduction in sundry debt between 25 and 26. And that was on the basis of a specific project where basically new ways of doing it and restructuring to a centralized function, which is kind of what we've been talking about in many of the best things, where we're actually, there's the sort of business operations centre and things like that, where there are processes happening in different pockets across the council. Debt recovery was one of those processes. And ultimately, it's more efficient to bring it to a central location where the people that are actually delivering that activity are specialists and experts, and we're not asking people that might work in a different field to do something that's outside of their sort of normal area of expertise or comfort. So, but it's had a fairly dramatic impact. I think on the opposite side of the coin, the council tax collection rates have fallen slightly, but we do remain the second best of all of the 11 North East councils. Business rates again have fallen slightly, and they remain strong. I mean, 96.9% of business rates collected. But that is slightly below the North East average, which in part is due to the fact that we have a higher proportion of smaller businesses, which are generally more vulnerable to the vagaries of the economy than other local authority areas. We've also got quite high levels of businesses operating in sort of hospitality and leisure, which are finding things quite challenging at the moment. Housing benefit overpayments, the numbers are smaller here, but we have the second lowest levels of any authority in the 11 in the North East. And I think the thing I picked out on that was that because of the changes to universal credit, fewer overpayments are being created, which has got to be the best way of solving that problem. Rather than creating the overpayment and then having to collect it, let's just not create the overpayment, and that's really positive. On housing rents, we have over 8,000 tenants, and I was quite pleasing to note that there were only 3 evictions last year. So it really is the teams involved in this. It really is the last resort, and that was down from 12 the previous year. And there's quite a bit of explanation in that report around how that debt is often accrued, and that's to do with the sort of nationally set criteria for the payment of universal credit. So people don't get universal credit for 5 weeks at that point, but they are expected to pay their rent before they start getting it. So that often leads to a sort of accrual of debt at that point. The report also sets out how the team are working really hard with people to try and, in all of these areas, to try and stop things getting to the point at which it becomes a serious problem, and working, so it's across council services, but it's also working with third parties like the Citizens Advice Bureau, and also quite a lot of work going on to ensure that people are getting the benefits they're entitled to under the sort of national rules, and so that will mitigate those situations. So I'll stop there. I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
I'll answer questions. Yes, they arise. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, any questions from members on that report? Councillor Robinson.
Thank you, Chair. Council tax.
Yes.
Why the large jump in arrears last year? And if we look at the last 2 years, probably 2/3 of the arrears.
You're aware council tax increases every year. During 25-26 was the first time in 4 or 5 financial years where working age claimants had council tax to pay. That led to in-year arrears, which in turn resulted in more reminders, final notices, summonses being issued, and liability orders being granted. There's a finite resource in recovery from council tax and business rates, and as the workload increases, the focus on prior years arrears would reduce. Attachment of benefits, attachment of universal credit is an option open to local authorities when a liability order is in place. The centralisation of universal credit and their processes have led to fewer successful applications for deductions from universal credit. There's 27 priorities for deduction from universal credit, and I believe council tax is number 23 in the list of priorities. So we may have a deduction in place, and if a greater priority comes in at a later point, ours would drop off and would take priority. So methods of recovery become more difficult. Methods available: attachment of benefit, attachment of earnings, enforcement agents, bankruptcy, charge and order. Enforcement agents, the large number of accounts are referred to enforcement agents, but that is difficult to collect because people are wise to don't open your door, don't do this, don't do
Are you saying this as people, primarily people who aren't paying council tax?
Yes.
Or people who are just in a few arrears? I think there's a big difference out there.
The difference is can't pay and won't pay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the distinction that we'll have to try and make. Historically, the recovery process from reminder onwards is very automated, etc. It's based on a set of parameters. Once the liability order is in place, there's discretion within the team how they progress that account. But the non-engagement of residents leads to more enhanced recovery action because we don't have any information about them. They don't engage, they don't try and make an arrangement, they don't know where they work, they don't know if they're on benefits or not. So it's the non-engagement with the resident that leads to greater and greater arrears on an annual basis. There are programs in place. There's going to be data matching with HMRC, where we're going to try to establish whether people work and where they work, and that'll increase the numbers that we can attach earnings on. But it's the lack of information that results in the difficulty in collection.
I think it sounds like you need to work with Jill.
I think, David, it's fair to say we've always put the message out there that if people are having difficulties, get in touch. There's lots and lots of different avenues that we can provide support. If you're struggling, don't close your door, don't ignore it, because it won't go away, and in fact it will probably get worse if you try and ignore it or don't engage for whatever reason. But if you are struggling, please get in touch, and we can provide support, put you in touch with people that can provide support and so on. And that's one of the key messages.
Emphasis of debt recovery, of debt reduction, isn't necessarily payment. It's maximising reliefs and benefits and exemptions. Yeah. And I think that's the emphasis of every interaction. But only when we can interact or we have interacted, that's the difficult.
Councillor Flower?
I think we have to recognise how tough it is there at the moment. You know, someone goes to work and they sort of come home, they pay their tax and national insurance, which is really high at the moment. They put fuel in their car, which is taxed beyond belief, and it's really high. They have to feed their children, clothe their children. And the last thing on the list for their money is council tax, because it comes out after everything else sort of thing. And it is really tough out there. So I think your point about people who will engage and won't engage is really pertinent. If someone is going to engage, I think we should have sort of dedicated people who will help them as much as possible, because it is really tough out there.
And we do have that available. Any more questions? Councillor Dungay?
Thanks, David. Just a basic one. I'm very pleased to see we're the second highest council tax in year collection rate in the North East. Is there anything we can learn from the council doing better than us?
Well, there are knowledge hubs and forums, and I've worked in Northern for many years, I'm new into this role from the 1st of May. So it's one of my actions is to gain best practice from other local authorities and to try to bring that best practice into Northumberland and similarly share our best practice with other local authorities.
If I can just add, it's good to see a reduction in the overall debt. The report itself is just to note, but one thing I would ask for future reports, when it comes to uncollected business rates, is it possible to include any information on how much of this is due to the number of businesses who've closed, gone bust, things like that, so we can see some correlation?
Yes.
As to those business failures, could be interesting to see that.
It is possible. There's an element of uncollectible debt within council tax and business rates. Some large balances in business rates where companies are insolvent and it's no longer collectible. But yes, I think
it'd be interesting to see like the trends that go on with regards to that as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Right, thank you for that. And thank you for the report. Which brings us to item 8, which is the work programme and monitoring report.
Yeah, sure. Want to highlight, Chair, the next meeting on the September will be a best property transformation report. So hopefully, maybe questions that I've got the answer there.
Got one in especially for you, Mark.
Yeah, I'm getting one in yet. I'm watching.
Okay, and as usual, if there's anything you'd like to be put on the work programme, please get in touch and we'll raise the chairs group. Other than that, item 9, I have no urgent business. And item 10 is the next meeting, Wednesday, the 30th of September. Other than that, thank you to officers, to all members. And with that, I'll close the meeting. Thank you.